Hello and welcome to the Navigating SBIR Reauthorization webinar we're presenting today. The SBIR STTR program is up for reauthorization again this year, and there are lots of interesting movements in Congress, and I thought it would be good to cover these and let small businesses understand what you should be doing in preparing for these things. So our outline today, purpose being to help small businesses prepare and adapt for the changes that could be coming forth through this legislation. We'll give some background on the SBIR STTR program and how it is authorized. We'll go through the proposed legislation so you can see exactly what they are. And then we'll identify what are the impacts to your small business from these proposed legislations. There is a call to action, and then we'll end it up with some resources that we offer here at TechOpp for small businesses. Let's start with the background of the program. The SBIR program is a long-standing federal funding program that began in 1977 from Ronald Tibbetts at NSF. The program was actually put into and authorized in 1982 by the Small Business Development Act that created the program. In 1992, it was reauthorized through the Small Business Research and Development Enhancements Act, reauthorized again in 2000, where the Small Business Innovative Research Program Reauthorization Act was initiated. And as you can see, this continued. In 2011, it was done under the 2012 Defense Authorization Act. In 2016, under the SBIR STTR 217 National Defense Authorization Act. This happened again in 2022, which you may remember, it hasn't been that long ago. And that included 6 pilot programs. And here we are in 2025 with another reauthorization on the table. The Innovate Act is probably the one that has received the most publicity, but there are also 2 other acts that are involved in this program, in the program as well. And there they are, the SBIR STTR, the Reauthorization Act of 2025, and then the RAMP Act as well. So how does this all work? How does it work from congressional mandates down to a program? It starts with a Congressional Reauthorization Act that has to be done that establishes congressional direction and prescribes the funding for the SBIR STTR program. From there, these changes are incorporated into the Small Business Act. The Small Business Act is the actual legislation, and it is edited to incorporate the legislation that is passed. From there, the Small Business Administration issues an overarching SBIR STTR policy directive. It's a single directive by SBA that advises all agencies. From there, each agency has specific regulations and procedures for the SBIR STTR activities that go on within their agency. They're specific for each agency. They are not consistent across all the agencies. I think the message here that's most important for small businesses is if you are proposing for a small business SBIR or STTR topic from any agency, or if you're applying for NSF, each of these agencies is different. You're going to need to read the requirements very, very carefully. So here's some proposed legislation that's out there now. The Innovate Act is the first one we'll cover. It's Senate Bill 853. The title is Investing in Next Generation Opportunities for Venture Acceleration and Technological Excellence. It was introduced on March the 5th by Senator Ernst. It was read twice and referred to the Committee on Small Business and Enterprise, which is the process that all these go through. This is the bill with the most text in it and the most changes. It is by far the most comprehensive bill, and there is a link to the full bill. And by the way, if you would like these slides, my contact information will be at the end of this presentation. Please just drop me a note. I'll be glad to send it to you, and these links will be hot links. The legislation was introduced by Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa, as I said, on the 5th of March. And there is some information about the senator and her webpage in the Senate. There is another version called the SBIR STTR Reauthorization Act of 2025. This is Senate Bill 1573. It addresses technical and business assistance, which the other bill did not. The agencies will no longer have assigned tab of vendors. Small businesses will choose their own. TABA can be used for other things than just commercialization. There is a commercialization peer review. Agencies must establish a technology commercialization office and an official. And they have to provide a pathway for phase 3, which I think is good news, and creates a commercialization impact assessment. It is now in the Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, as you probably recognize from the previous bill. That's where all these things go. This legislation was introduced by Senator Markey from Maine and here from Massachusetts, and there is his contact information as well. And the next version is the Research Advancing to Market Production for Innovators, or RAMP Act. There's a House version of this bill right now, which is there. It does several different things. It extends the FAST program through September of 2030. The FAST program is a program where federal funds are used to encourage states to have more people participate in the SBIR STTR program. The allocation for SBIR, which is now at 3.4%, increases to 4%, and then ultimately over the years to 7%. There's a lot more money for the SBIR program under this version of the bill. The allocation increases from 0.5% to 1%. It adds fellowship and intern opportunities with some minority outreach emphasis. It does talk about TABA and has some of the same opportunities for TABA that were in the other bill that I just mentioned. It does require that the federal contracting officer become trained on phase 3 funding, which is a good idea because it is challenging to get from phase 2 to phase 3, as you know, and the contracting officer could be some assistance there. So I think that's really good. It establishes a technology commercialization office and officer, again, as the previous one did, and produces a commercialization impact report to Congress. And the budget increases to emerging states to participate. And they're direct to phase 2 awards that have to be less than 10% of the total of all awards. And there's the link to that particular bill as well. This legislation was introduced by a representative from the state of Pennsylvania, whose contact information is right there. So there are 3 legislations out there. What is the impact to you as a small business? And what should you do at this point? And what should you know? What are some of the facts that you should know? I think one of the key facts that you should understand is this whole concept of emerging states. And this comes out of the Innovate Act definition, where it says emerging state is the 25 states with the fewest combined number of award recipients in the SBIR and STTR program. And they've received their first phase 1 award in the previous 10 years. We did a search to go through and identify what appear to be the top 25 emerging states. So if you are a small business in one of these emerging states, the program is really going to focus on you to try to bring more innovative companies from states that have not been heavily participating in the SBIR STTR program in the past. So you can just look at this list and see. We derive this by going and doing searches on the SBIR.gov database and identifying how many small businesses had received grants from various states. And then we sorted all that and put it in order, and that's how we came up with this list. So this is an emerging state definition. By the time the legislation comes in, it may have changed a little bit, but I think all in all, this is going to be a good list. So if you're on this list, you have a bullseye on you because they're interested in getting your company involved in the small business SBIR and STTR program. Now, the Small Business Act. The Small Business Act, as I mentioned before, is the actual legislation that is passed. This legislation has been around since the 1950s. What happens is as each of these bills goes through the House and Senate, as they're passed, they will be incorporated into the Small Business Act. So what I did was I took the Innovate Act and I incorporated the proposed changes into the Small Business Act. I then commented on each revised section to include those elements of interest to the small business community. So I went through this act line by line. Also did this for the other two proposed acts as well. If you would like one of these documents, please reach out to me and you will be able to see it's in MS Word, and I have track changes turned on. So you can see the actual change to the Small Business Act should the Innovate Act pass, or should the RAMP Act or one of these others pass. You'll be able to see exactly what language comes out of the Small Business Act and what language goes in. And my information will be on the last slide. Now, I've got 3 slides in here to where I do a line-by-line assessment of the Innovate Act. The page number is the page number on the Small Business Act. And page numbers in congressional legislation, as you may know, are a little bit unusual. It's not actually every page that shows up on your computer, so you have to look carefully at that, because the pages are numbered almost, it looks like it's about 3 computer pages to a single page number in the legislation. But just look carefully at that. But you should be able to look at the number on the section in the Small Business Act, and that is the page number that's referenced. And I just went and summarized the changes. And I did this by looking through the Small Business Act that we had amended by incorporating the Innovate Act. So as you can see on page 175, for example, they removed the funding reporting on women socially and economically disadvantaged, and they added the emerging states in there. So it should encourage, I think, in the fast awardee states that are emerging states, there should be a real encouragement there for the state to be funding some of these phase 0 programs that would get the small businesses into the SBIR STTR Act. And we should note that there was really no benefit for disadvantaged small business, even in the existing act. The SBIR STTR program is open to all small businesses, regardless. It did add a new type of Phase 1 program called the Phase 1A program. And it says Phase 1A are going to be able to apply for open topics. So this is an opportunity for a small business who have never bid an SBIR STTR, or I should say never have won an SBIR STTR award, to enter the program with a relatively small investment. The award is going to be $40,000, and the submission is going to be several pages. We'll get to that here in a minute. It allocates 10% more work share for small businesses and 10% less work share to research institutes for STTR programs only. So in STTR right now, it's 40-60 for the small business and the research. Now it's going to shift. So there's going to be more work share for the small business in the STTR program. Now, I say this as if this is fact. Recall, this is an act that is pending. It's in Congress. It's being reviewed. But if it were to pass, this is what it would do. It added definitions for new terminology such as emerging states and rural areas. And I have slides on emerging states, which you've seen already. I actually also have got some definition and a big list of the rural areas, but it was way too much to put on a slide. But I do have that. So if you'd like to see that, let me know. The SBIR tax increases is 3.2% now. It goes up to 3.45%, which means there's more funding available. There are, and down here in page 184 and 185 are some specific language about foreign ownership and IP transfer restrictions. And it is really kind of clamping down and discouraging, in my opinion, small businesses from foreign engagements. It removes enhanced outreach efforts to socially and economically disadvantaged small businesses, but it exchanges that for emerging state or rural area. Okay, it limits STTR funding. Now, this is the funding where you need to have a research institute, commonly a university, but not always. It could be a research institute. Funding at DoD and NASA to TRL 1, 2, and 3 only. Now, I'm assuming that's a starting point. That would make sense. But that's interesting that STTR applications with research institutions will need to be at a lower TRL. So the small business who has to own the contract is going to need to find a research institution willing to work at lower TRLs. And the team needs to recognize that the time to market is going to be increased because you're starting at a much lower TRL. It does note that STTR contracts are firm fixed price, which I believe they are now, as are SBIRs. By the way, you do not have to have a cost accounting system to be able to bid an SBIR. I hope you already knew that. It adds foreign risk and SBIR award instruction, and there's a certain conditions of which the STTR awardee has to repay the grant funds if they don't abide by the rules during the grant process, which means you've got to be very careful as you execute the process to make sure that you're executing according to the rules. There's some more that I'm going to go through here. There we go. It does remove the commercialization readiness program. The impact there would be if you are a CRP presently, it will not be renewed. It moves a provision to ensure adequate competition by assuring no entity is shaping the topic from another section. And what that is trying to do is say that, hey, if you're in an agency as a small business trying to seed a topic, as it were, that is being heavily discouraged. So you want to be very careful. Obviously, you want to build relationships within agencies. You want to talk about their challenges and maybe give them some ideas, because they're going to have to put topics out. They're putting topics out. As you know, DoD is putting topics out the first Wednesday of every month. Many of those topics, I'm sure, come from ideas that are generated in conversations with small businesses, but I think you just need to be cautious in those conversations. It does establish a $30 million ceiling for strategic breakthrough awards, which is identified by the agency principals, the DoD, DOE, Navy, NASA, whoever. It limits 10% of the funds to direct to phase 2 topics. So it would seem to me you need to prepare to bid more phase 1 opportunities. And what that means all in all is if you have technology that you're trying to get to market, you're going to need to come in at a phase 1. So that means your time to market is going to be increased. The DoD and NIH are limited to 30% of SBIR funds for direct to phase 2 topics. So in DoD, as you can see, there's going to be more direct to phase 2 topics than there would be, for example, in other agencies that have direct to phase 2. Small business is limited to 25 direct to phase 2 awards. Once again, it's not clear. I'm assuming this is a lifetime. But with direct to phase 2 topics limited, I don't really think this is going to be a substantial restriction. The agency is limited to 25 direct to phase 2 awards to one company. As you can see, that aligns with on the same page 208. It removes the sequential phase 2 awards from the STTR program, which is kind of interesting. Sequential phase 2 is a highly utilized program in our experience, because it is not at all uncommon for a small business going through phase 1 to reach TRL 2 or 3, and then in phase 2 they make it to 4 or 5, and they need another phase 2 to get to TRL 6 and get ready for a market. So this does change things a little bit in the STTR program. It defines strategic breakthrough awards, as I mentioned before. This one is very interesting. DoD shall provide direct access to program and requirements officers for small businesses. That's terrific news. I mean, I think the small business should remind their agency contact of this requirement, because this is often that valley of death, right, where you're into phase 2 and you are just not able to connect dots with a program of record so that you can find a home for your technology. Well, this here on page 211 emphasizes that they shall provide direct access to program and requirements officers. So I think you really need to lean on that. That's a really, really good section that has been added. Small businesses with over $75 million lifetime, phase 1 and phase 2, are now ineligible to apply. So in essence, if a small business has been awarded $75 million or more in funding over the lifetime of the program since the 1980s, they are now out of the program. We did a search and went through and isolated those companies, which I have coming up in a slide coming up later, if I recall right. And so that's going to be interesting, because these companies now are going to have to rely on the IP that they have created and commercial opportunities and opportunities to sell their technology into the military or other places, which means there are going to be more opportunities for small businesses to get into the program. It would make sense. It also may mean that there's going to be employees on the market, because the small business was relying on this quite a bit and not going to be able to do that anymore. It also limits the small businesses to apply phase 1 to only one proposal, or apply a PI to only one proposal per phase 1 or phase 2 solicitation. This is very interesting, because in the most recent release from DoD, there were 96 topics. So if you're a small business, which may have in the past scanned those topics, identified 3 or 4, but let's say you're a small business and you really only have 1 or 2 qualified principal investigators, you're going to now be limited to putting 1 principal investigator on 1 proposal. That PI cannot be spread and bid on more than 1 proposal during that solicitation. So that's going to limit you somewhat as to what you can propose. This is an interesting restriction, not exactly sure where that came from, but you're going to need to build a strategy to figure out if you really feel like you can bid more than 1 topic and you want to very strongly, realize that the PI has to be a 50% employee of you at the time of award. So it may be that you can get some contingent PIs that would come on upon award. I don't know. There needs to be a strategy to figure this out. But and this is the last of the line-by-line assessments. You cannot submit more than 3 proposals to a single solicitation. So that's kind of interesting. So if you're really leaning on SBIR to help move your innovation along, you might want to start looking at more funding sources like broad agency announcements and other things. You cannot apply to more than 25 phase 1 and phase 2 topics in a year to all agencies, which is kind of interesting because there are literally hundreds of topics coming out of DoD, and you can only apply to 25. So you're going to have to start prioritizing. Increased participation by states with low level of award. These were the emerging states and the rural states that talked about. So we're hoping that the states will augment their FAST or other state funding programs to introduce SBIR opportunities for you to bid those. Several of the states that we work with already have those kind of things that where they will, if you are bidding on your first SBIR STTR and you're a small business in that state, you are able to acquire funding to hire someone to help you get that first proposal submitted. And people tell me that when you're submitting your first proposal, it's very important to have some help because it is challenging. There is a lot of government speak that you may not be familiar with. There's a 2.5% of the SBIR budget that's going to the phase 1A awards, which I mentioned before. They're for first timers only. The proposal is limited to 2 pages with 5 sections. You're going to have to learn to be concise. It is worth investigating, I think. It is $40,000 maximum, which is really quite small. Most people have challenges actually getting their TRL to advance with $150,000. But this $40,000 award, it's said that it can be used for other things done too to help you maybe prepare for a full phase 1 or for a phase 2. So that is kind of interesting. And the phase 1 notification within 90 days of proposal submission. So people ask me all the time, hey, when I bid an SBIR, how long is it going to be before I know whether I win or lost? Well, this legislation says 90 days max. It does say that they may be used to prepare for a phase 1 or a phase 2 subsequent proposal. To me, that's to be determined how those funds are going to be used. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I think each agency will be able to write that into their specific implementation. There are some conversion rates here for phase 1 to phase 2 that small businesses are going to need to meet. Like if you have over 10 phase 1 awards, you've got to convert 25% of those to phase 2. If you have over 25 phase 1 awards, you've got to convert 50% to phase 2. So it's really, really important to be able to get that conversion done. In fact, that's so important that we're going to have a specific standalone webinar just about how to improve the conversion rate from your phase 1 to phase 2. I think you need to establish some project management and phase 2 capture strategy to improve your transition rate. What I found is many people in phase 1 are working hard on the technology, but they don't think about the transition to phase 2 so much. They just feel like that's going to happen. Well, it's not. It's not just going to happen. So, and here you can see right here, small businesses with greater than 25 phase 2 awards have got to have annual non-receipts exceeding the total of these awards. So this is really focused on post or non-SBIR, post-SBIR funding. You cannot be living on SBIRs. All right. So let's come up with a call to action now for this. I think you need to get involved. I really encourage you to read the proposed legislations, all of them. Do you agree with the provisions? Why or why not? You're a small business. You are the ones who are being impacted. You are the ones who are bringing technology into the market. You're making societal changes. You're putting technology in the hand of the warfighter to improve our probabilities for win. So please read through these things. Contact your elected official. I also feel like you should talk to the bill's sponsor, especially if you're in one of those states. Do your homework, make your case. If you love it, tell them. If you don't love it, say what you think should be different. Offer succinct wording. Consider how each element impacts the small business community. And prepare a contingency plan should the Innovate Act become law. You might even want to look at a contingency plan for the other acts as well, although they're not as wordy at this point in time. If you've reached a lifetime limit, then you need to begin sourcing other federal funds to replace those lost funds and replace those pretty quickly. If you've never bid an SBIR CTR, then you really need to study the Phase 1A provision and be prepared to submit on the next open topic that comes out that's applicable for the Phase 1A. Now, Phase 1A is going to want you to already understand something about the use case inside the fence, as it were. Let's say it comes out of Navy or Army. When you bid that topic, it is an open topic, so you're going to need to understand something about the use case. So what that means is now, I believe it's very important for you to reach into those agencies and build some business relationships so that you can understand the needs. And the same would be true in other areas like NSF. You need to really start understanding what are the societal needs that they're really, really focused on. Okay, well, how can we help? We do a lot of things that are no charge, as this webinar is no charge, and there are 3 more webinars coming out. One where I'll go into more detail about these changes to the program for early stage businesses. What does this mean for you? And then, as I mentioned before, we'll maximize your phase 1 to phase 2 conversion rate. How do you do that? And that's a challenge, and I'm happy to present some information there. Having been a PI myself and also a number of PIs that work here at TechOpp, we will show you how to maximize your phase 1 to phase 2 conversion rates. And then moving beyond SBIR funding, what else is out there in the federal grant world? It is a grant, which means it's non-dilutive. You're not going to have to pay it back. What's out there that you can get to that is going to be different and beyond SBIR STTR funding? So these 3 webinars are coming up. They'll be similar to this. I encourage you to sign up for those. You can do in the button there. And then we also have other information resources that are on our webpage that should be helpful for you. The things that we've talked about today, the Reauthorization Act, you can sign up for the upcoming live webinars there on that button. There are also going to be 3 other sections that we've put in on our webpage. One about recent news items where we're putting different things that have been published in the SBIR CTR programs, opportunities, progress on legislation, and so forth, so that you can read the upcoming news there in one central location. The proposed legislation, the information that I've talked about here, is also available in a button that you can click on our website to get more information. You can get to the actual legislations themselves. You can get other resources associated with this and prepare yourself to contact your elected official. The third area, which I think is really important and really cool that we've been able to do this, is that we've got a map on our webpage now that you can go to, and you can hover over any state and you can see how many SBIR awards have been made to that state from 2019 to 2025. From there, you can scroll down and you can actually see the awards by legislative district for each state. And that's really important. For example, here in Virginia, we went to our U.S. congressman and we set up a meeting. He was happy to meet with us. We went down, Congressman Griffith went down and met with him. And my boss took about 4 or 5 sheets of information about small businesses in his district that have won SBIR grants and were working on commercializing them. So we were telling him here, just 3 doors down here in Christiansburg, Virginia, for example, is a small business who's doing this kind of technology in your district hiring people, creating gross national product. And that was really interesting because a lot of that stuff he was not really aware of. I would please encourage you, do the same. Go to your elected officials, show them the benefit of the SBIR CTR program, tell them how important it is to you. If there's areas in these acts that you find to be onerous and a challenge, tell them that. Get them to get involved. I mean, they are elected officials, so I encourage you to do that. Our website also has a topic search tool where you can go click on that and put keywords in that represent your organization, and we will then return with topics that are alive and active to be bid on that you can consider. So this is a great place to go, kind of a one-stop shop to go find what topics are out there that I could be interested in without having to click through a whole lot of government websites. You can go into this one place. Here's just a summary of the support that we do provide. Proposal development. We coach people. We're not grant writers, but we do coach you through the preparation of your phase 1 or phase 2 proposal. People that hire us to do that are winning at 4 times the national average for a lot of reasons. One is that we really are a trusted advisor and will honestly talk you out of bidding if we don't think that you have a good chance. But we do offer proposal development. We are a technical and business assistance provider. So when you bid on a program on a topic and it has TABA funds available, select TechOpp. When you win, we win. And there we come in and jointly own the business case and help you identify markets. And we make contacts for you, and we go to conferences on your behalf. We do whatever we can do to help you commercialize your technology. We do training, as this training session is here. We also have training for the states. We do use FAST funds here in the state of Virginia and North Carolina and New York to help do public training events for small businesses in the states that are sponsored by some of the organizations within the states, and we're expanding that to other states even as we speak. We also do strategic marketing, where companies, I was just on the phone before this webinar with a company who has technology they've derived from a couple of universities, and they want to figure out where can I go find a market for this. And so we work with them to identify those markets and help connect them with funding sources, non-dilutive funding sources to advance their technology. So these are some of the things that we do here at TechOpp to help the small business community. Here's my contact information. I really appreciate you taking this half hour and 2 minutes to listen to these, go through these slides and learn a little bit about the reauthorization acts that are out there pending right now. If there's one thing you take away, please take away the fact that TechOpp really wants to enable small business success, and that we really encourage you to get involved in this legislation. Your voice does matter. We walked into our congressman's office, we talked to them about the program, and the gentleman paid attention, and he's aware. And you can ask that person to do specific things, to comment on specific sections of the acts that you may not like, or to ask for specific language to be added to the act. But they really do depend on you. So I would encourage you to go do that. And please feel free to reach out to me. My email is right there. My phone number is right there. More than happy to talk with you about the challenges that you're facing. If you've never gotten into the SBIR program before, is it right for me? Give me a call and drop me an email, set up a meeting, and I'll be glad to go through that with you. Once again, I really appreciate you participating in this webinar. I look forward to the other 3 that we're going to do in the coming weeks. And I hope you have a good rest of your day and week. Thank you again. This is Randy Simpson at TechOpp. I'll be signing off.